has always been a little creepy, in my opinion. He seems too nice, too joyful, and come on, that song? It's really just the stuff of nightmares when played in the right scenario, and that is why the rumors are plentiful when it comes to potential lost episodes, theories, all that creepy stuff. Let's get right into the scary stories as we cover the top 10 scary Barney Lost episodes. Watch if you dare. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Death. This is said to be a lost episode of Barney and Friends that recently came to light on TikTok. Many users were claiming that they were now remembering this dark episode that they had watched many years ago, and people were claiming that this episode was so dark that it made them feel basically traumatized. While Barney and Friends usually had episodes that taught us the value of friendship and good relationships, this episode is said to have had a much darker tone and allegedly only aired one single time. The episode in question is said to have been called Death, and many people have claimed that when the theme music started to play, you could hear a sort of creepy whispering just behind the music. After this, everything seemed to return to normal until Barney awoke. When Barney spoke, it was both the sound of his normal giggly voice, but there was also something darker behind it, like another voice underneath that was darker and lower and just sinister sounding. Apparently, this is the episode where Barney said that he was going to teach about death. People on TikTok have said that the episode ends with Barney going on a rampage and killing all of his friends on set, and at the end, he's still saying the classic "I love you, you love me" song, but just in a bit more of a screamy, demonic way than I think any of us are used to. So yeah, while I'm not entirely sure that this episode ever existed, if it did, I think it's probably for the best that it just stays lost. In our number 9 spot today, we have The End. This Barney story has one of the darkest endings, I think, of any episode on this list. Before the airing, this particular episode was marketed as an unreleased episode that would only be airing that night. Everyone gathered to watch this new, exciting episode, but for some reason when the episode started, something was off. As the music in the beginning started to play, it just wasn't quite right. Before long, the video started to cut in and out with whatever this tape was. Suddenly, in the Barney parts of the tape, Barney was alone, without anyone around. It was really hard to make out exactly what he was saying because the audio was so distorted, but the entire thing had a very chilling energy to it. As the video progresses, the clips get more and more choppy and cut in and out more, but we see Barney with something dangerous, preparing to do what some have described as harm himself. In all copies that exist of this lost episode, this is where they stop and the tape goes black. Many people believe this is because whoever created this dark episode cut the ending out to save us all from the horrors that the original tape held. In our number 8 spot today, we have Barney's Spooky Cemeteries stories. This story about a lost Barney episode was a story by The Shadow Reader, and basically it starts off when the creators of Barney decided one year to make a Halloween special. I personally love a good Halloween special, so that sounds great. Basically, the idea for it was to take 3 classic spooky tales and retell them, but give them a Barney spin. You know, make it a bit of a lighter story with some good lessons hidden inside. This episode ended up accidentally getting sent to a new animation studio instead of the one that they were meant to be sent to, but no one caught this mistake. This new animation studio was said to be quite a risque one that specialized in adult animation, and they had quite a crude sense of humor. Cut to the day that the episode airs. Well, this episode was cut 8 minutes into airing because what happened next was the retelling of tales, but it was even more horrific than the originals. It was gory, it was scary, and it was just awful. Of course, no one wanted to be culpable for how this episode somehow made it to air for the 8 minutes it did, so all copies were immediately deleted. It is said that, save for a few recorded versions of people who were ready to tape the Halloween special at home, the episode has been completely lost. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Barney Toy. This creepy Barney story starts off when there was a new product on the market. It was a toy version of Barney, but this toy had a special capability. It allowed viewers of the show who had the toy to participate, have a more visceral learning experience using the toy and certain episodes made for it. This all sounds fine and well and like a great new technology for fans of the show, until one person received their new Barney toy. Everything was going well with the new toy, they loved it, so much so that even when not watching the interactive episodes, they still got their Barney toy to watch the regular episodes alongside. One day, the dad in this situation was listening in from another room as they hung out and spoke to their Barney toy. It seemed very cute and sweet and so sincere, like they were actually talking to a real living thing, not a toy. That was until the dad felt like he could now hear a low, grumbling voice speaking back. Well, as it turns out, this Barney doll had some kind of a curse or a demon living inside of it, and when the dad noticed something wrong, of course, the evil entity tried to do everything it could to make sure that no one listens to him. From here, all hell breaks loose, and the entity in the doll ends up having control over the son, which leads to an exorcism being performed. A priest is called and thankfully able to rid the son of the entity and placed it back in the toy, which is now said to be locked up and buried somewhere secret so that hopefully no one ever stumbles upon it. In our number 6 spot today, we have the day on set. This creepy legend starts off with someone taking note of how a lot of the friends that appear on the show, you only see them once or twice before they suddenly just disappear, never to be seen again. This person took note of this after they spent a day on set, as they were one of the lucky ones who was going to be one of the friends on the show, but after leaving that day, they definitely will never be returning. As soon as they got there, things just weren't as expected. There was a very heavy and dark energy in the air, and once they saw Barney, they felt like something cold was there, rather than a warm, welcoming person that they had expected. They began to rehearse for the day, and this is when they began to realize even more grim stuff around the set. There were dangerous tools left out in plain sight, way too close to everyone who was supposed to be getting ready to perform. They began to notice some red spots on some of the costumes, especially Barney's, and when they mentioned it, everyone in the costumes just eerily and blankly stared at them. This all made them feel extremely uneasy, and it led to them trying to find a way to go home early because they knew they just needed to leave. There were red flags everywhere. They explained to the crew that they suddenly weren't feeling well and that they think they needed to go home, and this is when all of the actors stood there, silently staring at them. They stood there unsure of what to do for what felt like an eternity, but in reality was probably about 30 seconds, and when no one moved or responded, they began to walk for the door. This is when all of the actors in costumes grabbed the tools laying around the set and suddenly started running towards them, trying to catch them before they could get out the door. They ran as fast as they could and luckily reached the door before any of the actors got to them and were safe once they stepped outside. I mean, the costumed actors weren't going to burst out of the studio because they didn't want to get caught in their maniacal plans. In the end, it's safe to say that this person never watched another episode again, and they got their answer as to where all of the friends on the episodes go to. In our number 5 spot today, we have The Trip. This rumored lost episode is a bit of a light-hearted break in some of these extremely dark stories we've been talking about. This episode is said to have been one where Barney had a bit of a slip-up accidentally. Playing the role of Barney probably isn't an easy one. You have to be perpetually joyful while moving and dancing around in a giant purple dinosaur costume, and I'm sure the job can be frustrating at times. This all leads up to one day while filming, the actor playing Barney was having a particularly difficult day, personally and professionally. Of course, the show must go on, so he suits up, starts the show as per usual. Everything is going fine, but on this day, a member of the set team hadn't quite run some of the lines through the set properly. And what I mean by this is that there were some cords that were on the floor, and they weren't taped down properly or marked, which becomes quite a tripping hazard. If you've worked as a performer before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This all leads to one moment in the show when everything has been going smoothly. Barney is in character and moving around the set, but he gets to the area with the untaped wires and it causes him to trip. In an act of frustration and probably a little terror, as, well, I mean, tripping in full dinosaur costume isn't exactly ideal, this man on live television lets out a series of expletives as he falls, right in front of everyone on set and the thousands watching at home. Safe to say the episode that day was cut short and definitely never aired again. In our number 4 spot today, we have the DVD. This story starts off with someone going to the store to buy a DVD, which is so funny to me because that immediately just dates this story. How weird is that? Anyway, as they found their DVD and were about to head to pay, they accidentally stepped on something and heard a cracking sound. When they looked down, they realized that they had stepped on a DVD case of a Barney and Friends. This DVD had 6 episodes on it, and when they picked it up and examined it, they decided that maybe this was just meant to be, so they bought it. They didn't use this DVD right away, however. I mean, it was a bit of a last-minute impulsive purchase, but when the time did come, they put the DVD into the player and nothing happened. They took it out of the player and looked at it to see if there was damage or if it needed a quick cleaning, but they found nothing, so once again they put it back into the machine, and this time it started. The menu pops up first, and when it did, something seemed off. There weren't many options and there was no music playing, but hey, that's not too bad. They hit play on the first episode, and it starts off with Barney sitting on a bench looking sad. He sat there in silence for quite a while before he finally spoke. "Nobody loves me anymore. I will teach them a lesson," he said, before looking directly into the camera and smiling a horrifying smile. Suddenly, someone begins walking down the road near Barney. As they pass him, Barney jumps up and scares him before grabbing him by the leg and pulling him. He pulls so hard that his entire leg comes off. Barney grabbed the other leg and kept dragging him back off the road into the bushes beside it. From here, the most gruesome things happen that I certainly cannot go into detail about, but it's safe to say that Barney had taken the life of this person. The person watching the DVD was of course absolutely horrified at what they had just watched, scared of what would happen next, so they immediately got the disc out of the player. They took the disc outside, smashed it with a baseball bat as much as they could, and then threw it into the woods. They were plagued with nightmares for weeks after, and they finished off their story with this harrowing message. Quote, "If you ever find a copy of it, never ever view it. Try to burn it or smash it if you can. If you view it, those horrible nightmares come flooding in." In our number 3 spot today, we have The Friends. There is rumored to be a lost episode of Barney that has a part where all of the friends in the episode turn on him. What usually is a fun, loving time with lots of learning quickly turns horrendous, but not for the reasons I would have expected. Barney's kind of freaky, like I mentioned at the beginning. He's a little creepy, and if something went wrong on this show, I always expected that it would be Barney that went haywire. But in this lost episode, the roles were really reversed. It isn't quite clear exactly what Barney did, but suddenly everyone just decides that they've had it with putting up with him. It starts with one friend, but suddenly everyone starts joining in and everything erupts into chaos. There is yelling, there is fighting, people are getting hurt, the set is being destroyed, and then suddenly everything just goes blank and the episode was cut short. This episode is said to have only aired once, and the screen going blank was because the network playing it had cut it off due to the violence. This means that no one knows how the episode ends or what happens. Did everyone kiss and make up? Was there a gruesome, gory ending? And how did this episode make it to air in the first place? No one, except for the person who made it, knows the answers to any of these questions, and we're all just left to speculate. In our number 2 spot today, we have The Theory. Rather than a lost episode, this is more like a horrifying Barney theory, and basically it suggests that either the person who plays Barney in the costume is stuck in there and can never come out, or that Barney actually has no one in there. He's just a real sentient creature that is stuck doing this show over and over again. In both of these scenarios, Barney is being held against his will and forced into doing this work, and should he not deliver a happy, joy-inducing performance, he will be subjected to horrible punishments as a result. It's a terrible and terrifying theory, but since I first heard it, I can't stop thinking about it. Whether you believe it or not, it definitely adds an eerie layer to any episode, because it will always linger in the back of your mind. What if? In our number 1 spot today, we have The Real Dinosaur. There are rumors of an episode that exists, and I'm gonna be honest, no one is really sure exactly what happens in this episode, but it doesn't even matter, because there is one thing that no one who has seen this episode will ever forget. In the episode, Barney, the purple dinosaur, at some point turns into a very real, very terrifying, and very hungry dinosaur. Yep, goodbye songs and hugs, hello gigantic growls, and people running for their lives. All anyone who has seen this episode can remember is that while everyone quickly runs away, not everyone can escape the wrath of Barney, the real dinosaur. The episode featured gruesome carnage, and Barney tore his way through everyone and everything that he could. In the end, however, the the episode gets even darker because Barney turns back into his regular, loving self and now has to face the consequences of what he did while he was in this monster form. It isn't clear exactly how this transformation happened, but it is clear that everyone involved and everyone who saw this episode still lives with the trauma today. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!